Hello, I'm Bob Megna. I'm the Budget Director of New York State, not the Commissioner. I am going to open up today's program, but let me first start with some acknowledgments of folks in the audience. We're glad they're here. Secretary to the Governor, Larry Schwartz, Senator George Latimer, Assemblyman David Buchwald, Westchester County Clerk Tom Idoni. President of the New York State Building and Construction Trades Councils, John Cahill, and all of the other distinguished elected officials who have joined us here today. Let me get right to introducing the august members of this panel, and let me say it's an incredible privilege to be here today with people I have had the lucky privilege to have worked with over the years and who have been, in a large part, mentors and teachers to me. Let me start with the members of the commission. Dal Forsyth. Dal Forsyth serves as the Vice President of Finance and Operations at Atlantic Philanthropies. He teaches financial, governmental, and nonprofit financial management at New York University's Wagner School of Public Service. He served as budget director for the state of New York and for the New York City Board of Education, and as a constant informal advisor to the current budget director. James Wexler. James Wexler is director of Deloitte & Touche Tax New York City office. He's just retired from that function. Mr. Wexler is a former commissioner of New York State Department of Taxation and Finance, a position he served in from 1988 to 1994. We also have Heather Bruschetta with us today. Heather Bruschetta became president and CEO of the Business Council in January of 2012 after serving as vice president of government affairs since joining the company in 2007. Heather has served as an assistant counsel to the New York State Senate Majority and worked for the Assembly Majority for several years as legislative aide, counsel to the Racing and Wagering Commission. She has also served as special counsel in the State Attorney General's office. Bill Rudin. Bill Rudin serves as vice chairman and CEO of Rudin Management Company, Incorporated. In this capacity, he helps to manage the Rudin portfolio of 16 office towers comprising more than 10 million square feet of space in 20 luxury apartment buildings. Rudin serves as chairman of the Association for a Better New York, ABNY, chairman of the Battery Conservancy, and is a board member of the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation. Jack Quinn, who flew all the way from Buffalo today to be with us. Jack Quinn is former U.S. Congressman for New York State, serving from 1993 to 2005. He has been the president of Erie County Community College in Buffalo, New York since April of 2008. Prior to his election to Congress, Jack served as supervisor of the town of Hamburg. Dennis Hughes. Dennis cannot be with us today, but Dennis has agreed to be part of the commission. Dennis serves as senior advisor to the Brown and Weinrob PLLC. He is former chairman of the New York Federal Reserve Bank and a former president of the New York State AFL-CIO. Mr. Hughes recently served on Spending and Government Efficiency, the SAGE Commission that was put in place by the governor when he was first elected to modernize and right-size state government, improve performance, increase accountability, and save taxpayers money, and give a lot of great suggestions to the budget director of the state. Last but certainly not least, let me introduce the two co-chairs, Governor George Pataki. Governor Pataki led the people of New York for 3 terms as the state's 53rd governor. His long history of public service includes serving in the state Senate, Assembly, and as mayor of Peekskill. The governor has also served as the U.S. delegate to the 62nd session of the General Assembly of the United Nations and has co-chaired the Council on Foreign Relations Independent Task Force on Climate Change. He is currently the founder and chairman of the Pataki Cahill Group, as well as counsel to the law firm of Chadbourne and Park, focusing on their energy, environmental, and infrastructure practice areas. Last but certainly not least, Chairman Carl McCall. Carl McCall has led a distinguished career and brings with him a wealth of knowledge and experience gained from his service in various positions throughout government and the private sector. He currently serves as chairman of the State University of New York Board of Trustees. He served as controller of New York State for almost a decade, as a 3-term New York State Senator, ambassador to the United Nations, commissioner of the Port Authority, not to mention corporate director of the New York Stock Exchange. And I think I'll end there because we have time constraints today. Let me give a brief introduction to why we're here today. As a person who has worked in budget-related service and public service to New York State for more than 25 years, I've come to appreciate when we have significant change in the state and when that change has had a beneficial impact both on how state government works and how it provides services to the people of the state. As budget director under Governor Cuomo, I have seen a revolutionary change in the way budgets get done in New York State. And that comprises getting 3 budgets done in a row on time. It comprises keeping spending under 2%. It comprises a whole matrix of things we have achieved, the governor has achieved over the past 3 budgets. Most importantly, I think it has been his focus on fiscal issues and his determination to get the fiscal house of the state of New York in order. And the world has recognized that. The people we deal with all the time, the rating agencies of the state of New York, have put us either as a AAA rating on our income tax debt or with a positive watch to upgrade our rating in the near future. In fact, just this past week, we put out a new New York credit, never been issued before, and all of the rating agencies, Standard & Poor's gave it a AAA rating, and the 2 other rating agencies gave it a AA+ rating. That is an indication of how people who know how the fiscal finances of the state work are interpreting what we have accomplished, what the governor has accomplished over the past 3 budgets. So I'm going to stop talking now and introduce the governor of the state of New York, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. First, let us all thank our hosts, Manhattanville College. It's a personal pleasure to be back again, and we thank them very much for hosting this important session today. To the budget director, Bob Megna, who you just heard from, who's done outstanding work for 3 years in my administrations, worked for the state before that in a number of capacities. Being budget director is not easy. Out of every 10 questions, the answer is no 9 times out of 10, especially in these economic times. But he's done extraordinary work. Let's give him a round of applause, Bob Megna. To the members of the panel today, you heard from their resumes. They are a truly distinguished group that brings the knowledge that is essential to this task. They also bring a diversity of opinion, which is actually going to be a positive. They're kind and they're generous to be giving their time to do this. It's not an easy task. It's tedious, but it is essential. I can promise them great rewards at the end of this service, all the coffee you can drink, and an occasional Danish. But thank you very much for your service. Let's give them a round of applause. And I'll have more to say about our 2 co-chairs in just a moment. To give you a brief overview of the charge to this commission, it is about our ongoing effort to restore fiscal integrity. Governor Pataki, Controller McCall, Chairman McCall will tell you that job number one for a governor, for state leaders, is the economic health of the state. And that's what we have been focusing on from the first day I took office, and that is what we are continuing to focus on. We've worked to take the budget process, which was a highly politicized process for many years, and turn it into a real financial process. And rather than have the budget debate be a political debate, make it a sound, intelligent economic debate on economic priorities for the state. One of the things we did was we ended what's called the automatic inflators that were in the budget process. Every year the budget would go up automatically, about 10% for education, about 10% for Medicaid, and then the governor, the executive, was working against those proposed increases, which changed the entire discussion. We also restructured the tax code on the personal income tax side, where we added additional brackets to the tax code, 4 additional brackets to have the New York State tax code be more of a graduated tax code, which was fairer for everyone. We passed what's called Tier 6, which was pension reform for the state of New York, which we desperately needed. New York State government, local governments, governments all across this country are suffering under what are staggering pension costs in the out years. And passing pension reform was a significant benefit to the financial condition of this state. We reduced the state labor force, given the economic times, from 137,000 down to 120,000. We renegotiated our labor contract to the so-called 3 zeros, no increase for 3 years in a row, which saved us $450 million. We passed a 2% property tax cap on local governments, which put finally a ceiling on the increases in property tax, which were seemingly never ending. And it's a tremendous burden on the state, and I'll speak more about that in a moment. And the state itself has adopted a 2% spending cap. So we are practicing what we preach. We are living within a 2% spending cap, and we're asking local governments to live within a 2% property tax cap at the same time, finally curbing spending in the state of New York. When you look at the budget process over the few years, we have gone from a negative place to a positive place. When we started in 2012, we had a $10 billion deficit, which when I first became governor and I looked at the size of that deficit, I wondered whether or not I made the right decision, but it was too late at that point. $10 billion deficit when we walked in. We addressed that. The next year was $3.5 billion, then down to $1.4 billion. But now the tide is turning, and because we have done what we needed to do in terms of getting our fiscal house in order, we see the budget going to a positive place, and we are actually looking at a potential surplus over the next few years. 2016, $1.5 billion, 2017, $2.9 billion. That is now a different equation for the state. We spent the first 3 years figuring out basically how to fill the gaps, how to close the deficit. We now have another question. How do you invest in the state's economy? And how do you use this period of growth to actually increase the economic competitiveness of the state of New York? The fiscal progress spells tax relief. We've started tax relief already. We cut the personal income tax in this state. Everyone pays a lower income tax rate today than they did 3 years ago. Everyone in the state pays a lower income tax rate than they did 3 years ago. People in the middle class, up to $300,000, which is an expansive middle class, pay the lowest tax rate in 62 years, believe it or not. So we have already restructured the personal income tax. We've also passed a number of tax credit programs for targeted assistance, youth tax credit, hiring tax credits, veterans hiring tax credits. And we just started a program I'm very excited about, which is Startup New York, which is 0 taxes for 10 years in what we call startup zones, which are all across the state, primarily in upstate New York. So we have already started down the road of tax relief, but this Commission's charge is now to map out the next phase of tax relief. We're asking the Commission to focus on property taxes. Why? The single largest tax in the state of New York is the property tax. People think the largest tax is the income tax. It's not. We collect about $50 billion per year from the property tax. The personal income tax is only about $40 billion, only, but it's significantly less than the property tax. So when New Yorkers are talking about the high tax burden of living in New York, the number one burden is property taxes. Even for businesses, the number one tax in the state is property tax, believe it or not. Businesses pay about $17 billion in property taxes. Corporate taxes are only about $7 billion. So more than double the tax on business is a property tax and not a corporate tax. Also, our property taxes are grossly unfair, and compared to the rest of the country, they are a gross burden. 3 of the 4 highest taxed counties in terms of property tax rates are right here in the state of New York. 3 of the 4 highest in the nation. We're in Westchester today, which is the single highest taxed county in the nation when it comes to property taxes. Nassau is number 2, and Rockland is number 4. So 3 of the top 4 highest tax counties in the nation. In some ways even worse, when you look at property taxes as a percentage of home value, not absolute dollars, but property taxes as a percentage of home value, 13 of the 15 highest tax counties in the country are right here in the state of New York. So, property taxes are the number one tax in the state. They're the number one tax on business. They're bigger than the income tax. And we are way out of pace with the rest of the country in terms of property tax, both in dollars and in percentage. And property taxes are a scourge all across the state. The downstate suburbs, Westchester, Nassau, Rockland, in terms of absolute dollars, and upstate New York in terms of percentage of property value. So from a tax point of view, the number one priority, in my opinion, is to do more on property taxes. Remember, we already passed a 2% property tax cap, which was a radical progressive step. We now want to do even more. We also are asking the Commission to review any taxes that they believe are unduly burdensome to business and to middle class and working families. This is a very competitive economic environment. We've been talking about mobility for a long time. People can leave, businesses can leave. Well, people and businesses are leaving, and they will shop tax climate. And New York, I believe, is the greatest state in the country, but there are other states that have more favorable tax climates, and businesses and people can shop those tax climates and they can leave, and we have to keep that in mind. So we're asking the Commission to look at the tax code, unduly burdensome taxes on business, middle class, working families. Again, the goal is to make us as competitive as possible. Organizationally, the way we're going to do this is twofold. We've already impaneled what we call a Tax Simplification Commission. One of the tasks we want to accomplish is to simplify the state code. The federal government has talked about, for a long time, simplifying the federal code. It really hasn't happened to any significant degree. Let's take the state code and let's simplify it. It doesn't have to be as complicated as it is. It don't have to be as many caveats and loopholes and exceptions. We believe we can simplify the code, which in and of itself is an advantage to business and to taxpayers. And we have a very good group. Chairman McCall and Peter Solomon chair that group. They've been working for a number of months. We're excited about their product. They're going to report in December. But ways to simplify the tax code. That was their charge. It was a revenue-neutral charge, because at that time, we weren't sure of what the revenue forecast was going forward. So their task is more of an organizational simplification of the code. This commission, the charge is in many ways analogous, but focus on tax relief. The simplification, the organization of the code, we understand, focus on tax relief. Again, property taxes primarily, and other taxes that they find overly burdensome for businesses and working class families. The co-chairs, as you've heard from Bob Megna, are Governor George Pataki and Controller Carl McCall. And let me say this, you could not have two people who better understand these issues, the history of these issues, and the complexity of these issues. And I don't believe you could have two people that bring more complementary perspectives in this regard. Governor George Pataki, as an executive, you're responsible for the overall finances of the state. You're proposing budgets, you're passing budgets, you're working with the legislature. You understand what the tax competitiveness of the state means. Controller Carl McCall audited the state of New York. He understands the financial security. He understands how important the bond rating is. He understands how important the stability of the state's finances are. And those are really the two proper lenses to look at this issue. Obviously, members of the commission bring business expertise, et cetera. But you couldn't put together a better group for this task than the expertise that is represented by this commission. And also, it's no secret that this is not just a financial task and an economic task, it's also a political task. And I believe one of the great challenges for government, especially today, is to include people with different opinions and different perspectives and still move forward, right? Have a discussion, understand and appreciate different opinions, but at the end of the day, come together in a way that allows the collective to move forward. We've seen the alternative in Washington. We've seen what gridlock can do. And when you have people who choose to argue rather than finding ways to come to a compromise. Situation like Washington, everybody loses. Everybody loses because literally you just don't move forward. And you can point fingers and you can cast blame, but there's no doubt that it hurts everyone. Luckily in this state, we've had the exact opposite experience. I've worked very hard for the past 3 years to perform governmental tasks in a bipartisan, nonpartisan way. I've worked very hard to reach across the aisle and work with colleagues on both sides of the aisle in both houses. As we take this next step forward, getting ready for next year, and this is going to be a centerpiece of the agenda for next year, I think this commission poses the perfect vehicle to be able to say to the legislature and the people of this state, we took a very complex topic, a typically controversial topic, which is tax policy, and we gave it to the best people imaginable, the best experts you could find, representing different political parties, different political perspectives, and we came up with the best plan for the state of New York. That's what it's all about. Again, I want to thank the entire commission. Special thanks to Governor George Pataki, who has many obligations and is very kind, and in keeping with his responsibility and love for this state, has agreed once again to give public service some of his time in the state of New York. And also Chairman Carl McCall, who has also dedicated so much of his life to this state. He's done us the added service of serving as chairman of SUNY, which is a very, very important task. SUNY is a great asset for the state, so we thank him for also taking on this responsibility. With that, I'll turn it back to Mr. Bob Megna. Thank you.
Governor. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Governor Pataki.
Thank you, Bob. And first, let me thank Governor Cuomo for asking me to co-chair this Tax Relief Commission. And Chairman McCall, it's an honor to serve with you again as co-chair as well. And to all the members of the commission, it will be exciting for us to work together to try to make this state even better. I have to confess, when I got the call from Governor Cuomo, I wasn't sure he had dialed the right number. But we sat down and talked, and I became convinced of the sincerity with which Governor Cuomo intended next year to look to reduce the tax burden on the people of the state of New York. And I said yes, and there's three basic reasons. First, I love this state. I was born right here in this county in Peekskill. I still live in the Hudson Highlands. I work in New York City. And when Libby and I leave our home, we go to our farm up in the Adirondacks in the Champlain Valley. It's hard to blast me out of this state. It is just a wonderful place that has given tremendous opportunity to me and my family, and we have an obligation to make sure it gives those opportunities to future generations. Second, it's hard to say this calmly, but government has to work. When you look at what is happening in Washington, it's extremely sad for the people of this country. And with Governor Cuomo, I'm not saying this side deserves the blame or that side deserves the blame, but quite simply, elections are political. Governing should be about the people and the public interest. So there comes a point where you have to set aside partisan politics and just say, we're going to do what's right for the people and come together and try to find the common ground necessary to move our state or our country forward. And when Governor Cuomo called, my understanding and my belief is that this is a sincere effort not to be political, but to do what's right for the people of this state. And you can't say no when a request like that is made. And third, it's the nature of this commission. It's called the Tax Relief Commission. And one of the things I have always believed is that government spends too much, costs too much, and imposes too great a tax burden on the people. One of the core elements of my 12 years was cutting taxes, and we cut them by more than any other state in the union by far over the course of those 12 years. But quite simply, the taxes are still quite high. And given where the state's finances are today, and given the governor's vision for where the finances will be next year, I believe that this commission can work together in the public interest and suggest significant tax relief that will help the people of this state with their tax burden and will help our economy to grow to create the jobs we need for the people who desperately need a job today or who will be looking for one tomorrow. So it's a pleasure to serve on this commission. I have high hopes for what we can achieve. I thank Governor Cuomo and look forward to serving with the Controller McCall and the other members of the commission.
Well said.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Governor Pataki. Now I'd like to turn it over to Chairman McCall.
Thank you, Bob. It's really a pleasure to be here with two governors, Governor Cuomo and Governor Pataki, for this important announcement. I don't think I have to tell anybody that taxes, high taxes, are one of the most challenging issues facing economic growth in New York. But as the former state comptroller, someone who looked at the books and knows how we stand, I want to tell you that with great certainty that this is the best fiscal shape our state has been in years. Under Governor Cuomo's leadership, New York has managed to turn the tide on its economic situation by actually controlling spending, holding the line on state costs, and ensuring that every dollar is used efficiently. In his first year in office, Governor Cuomo made a bold statement to Albany. He said the old ways of dysfunction, discord, and delay were over. Instead, state government was going to come together and work for the people, balancing the books, passing budgets on time, and ending our reputation as a tax and spend state. He has lived up to that promise. This is a critical moment for New York State. We must seize on it by taking advantage of our current fiscal position to lower taxes even more for middle-class and working-class families across the state. Governor Cuomo is bringing us together across political boundaries because he knows that by working together and committing ourselves to meet the needs of the people of this state who need jobs, who need certainty about the fiscal condition, and certainty about having a secure future for them and their families. This is what this is all about. I want to thank Governor Cuomo for his leadership and for bringing us together. I look forward to working with this distinguished group to continue my public service to the people of New York. Thank you.
With that, I want to thank all the members of the commission for coming today. I want to thank Governor Cuomo, Governor Pataki, Chairman McCall, and all the other members who have agreed to participate in this important project, and I look forward to just having the chance to work with folks on this very vital project for the people of the state of New York.
Well done. Thank you.